And, imagine, suddenly she began to speak. "Do you like my flowers?" I remember clearly the sound of her voice, rather low, slightly husky, and, stupid as it is, it seemed that the echo resounded in the lane and bounced off the dirty yellow wall. I quickly crossed to her side and, coming up to her, answered. "No." She looked at me in surprise, and I suddenly, and quite unexpectedly, understood that all my life I had loved precisely this woman. Quite a thing, eh? Of course, you'll say I'm mad? I won't say anything, Ivan exclaimed, and added, I beg you, go on. And the guest continued. Yes, she looked at me in surprise, and then, having looked, asked thus. You generally don't like flowers? It seemed to me there was hostility in her voice. I was walking beside her, trying to keep in step, and, to my surprise, did not feel the least constraint. No, I like flowers, but not this kind, I said. Which, then? I like roses. Then I regretted having said it, because she smiled guiltily and threw the flowers into the gutter. Slightly at a loss, I nevertheless picked them up and gave them to her, but she, with a smile, pushed the flowers away, and I carried them in my hand. So we walked silently for some time, until she took the flowers from my hand and threw them to the pavement, then put her own hand in a black glove with a bell-shaped cuff under my arm, and we walked on side by side. Go on, said Ivan, and please don't leave anything out. Go on? Repeated the visitor. Why, you can guess for yourself how it went on. He suddenly wiped an unexpected tear with his right sleeve and continued, Love leapt out in front of us like a murderer in an alley leaping out of nowhere, and struck us both at once. As lightning strikes, as a Finnish knife strikes. She, by the way, insisted afterwards that it wasn't so, that we had, of course, loved each other for a long, long time, without knowing each other, never having seen each other, and that she was living with a different man as I was, too. Then with that, what's her? With whom? Asked Homeless. With that Wellwith, replied the guest, snapping his fingers. You were married? Why, yes, that's why I'm snapping with that Varenka Manichka. No, Varenka striped dress, the museum anyhow, I don't remember. Well, so she said she went out that day with yellow flowers in her hand so that I would find her at last, and that if it hadn't happened, she would have poisoned herself, because her life was empty. Yes, love struck us instantly. I knew it that same day, an hour later, when, without having noticed the city, we found ourselves by the Kremlin wall on the embankment. We talked as if we had parted only the day before, as if we had known each other for many years. We arranged to meet the next day at the same place on the Moscow River, and we did. The May sun shone down on us. And soon, very soon, this woman became my secret wife. She used to come to me every afternoon, but I would begin waiting for her in the morning. This waiting expressed itself in the moving around of objects on the table. 10 minutes before, I would sit down by the little window and begin to listen for the banging of the decrepit gate. And how curious, before my meeting with her, few people came to our yard, more simply, no one came, but now it seemed to me that the whole city came flocking there. Bang goes the gate, bang goes my heart, and, imagine, it's inevitably somebody's dirty boots level with my face behind the window. A knife grinder. Now, who needs a knife grinder in our house? To sharpen what? What knives? She would come through the gate once, but my heart would pound no less than 10 times before that, I'm not lying. And then, when her hour came and the hands showed noon, it even wouldn't stop pounding until, almost without tapping, almost noiselessly, her shoes would come even with my window, their black suede bows held tightly by steel buckles. Sometimes she would get mischievous, pausing at the second window and tapping the glass with her toe. That same instant I would be at the window, but the shoe would be gone, the black silk blocking the light would be gone, I'd go and open the door for her. No one knew of our liaison, I assure you of that, though it never happens. Her husband didn't know, her acquaintances didn't know. In the old house where I had that basement, people knew, of course, they saw that some woman visited me, but they didn't know her name. But who is she? Asked Ivan, intrigued in the highest degree by this love story. The guest made a gesture signifying that he would never tell that to anyone, and went on with his story. Ivan learned that the master and the unknown woman loved each other so deeply that they became completely inseparable. Ivan could clearly picture to himself the two rooms in the basement of the house, where it was always twilight because of the lilacs and the fence. The worn red furniture, the bureau, the clock on it which struck every half hour, and books, from the painted floor to the sooty ceiling, and the stove. Ivan learned that his guest and his secret wife, from the very first days of their liaison, had come to the conclusion that fate itself had thrown them together at the corner of Tverskaya and that lane, and that they had been created for each other for all time. Ivan learned from the guest's story how the lovers would spend the day. She would come, and put on an apron first thing, and in the narrow front hall where stood that same sink of which the poor patient was for some reason so proud, would light the kerosene stove on the wooden table, prepare lunch, and set it out on the oval table in the first room. When the May storms came and water rushed noisily through the gateway past the near-sighted windows, threatening to flood their last refuge, the lovers would light the stove and bake potatoes in it,